Calling to order the Town of Corte Madera Planning Commission for Tuesday, April 26th, 2022. Please join me in a salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Wolf. Would you call the roll, please?
Happy to do so. Commissioner Metcalf.
Present.
Commissioner Bundy.
Here.
Commissioner Chase.
Here.
Commissioner Bendel.
Here.
And Commissioner Rizzo.
Commissioner Rizzo is unable to attend tonight due to some personal development, so we can't see him in person tonight. Tonight, this is the second meeting that we're having with hybrid conditions. And I would ask that everybody, if they have a comment, that they either email them in or raise their hand on Zoom. And we'll be sure to get any emailed comments read into the record. If you can't connect via Zoom, if you are on Zoom. So at this point in every meeting, we open the meeting to public comment for that which is not on tonight's agenda. You have 3 minutes to do a comment if it's something that is not on the agenda tonight. So I will ask Tracy if she has any emails or hands up for public comment.
Thanks, Chair Chase. I don't see any emails and no hands are raised.
All right. Do we have anyone in the room that wishes to make a comment? All right, seeing none and hearing none. We'll close the public comment section of tonight's agenda. And we'll head straight into our new hearings. So tonight we have a hearing for 24 Mohawk Avenue, design review of a proposal for construction of a new 2-story single-family home with attached garage and the demolition of the existing residence at 24 Mohawk Avenue. So what we'll do is we'll get the presentation by staff. We'll ask questions of staff. Then we'll have a presentation by the applicants, I presume. And then we will go into public comment. So after that, preamble, Mr. Boyle, it's yours.
Thank you. Tracy, if you could bring up the PowerPoint, that would be great. Good evening, Chairman Chase and members of the Planning Commission and members of the public. I'm Phil Boyle, Senior Planner with the town. And yes, as Chairman Chase mentioned, this is design review application for a brand new 2-story home at 24 Mohawk Avenue. See if I can get our clicker working. There it is. So the project is located in the southern part of Madera Gardens. Is located here, shown on this location map, is a quite large lot for the neighborhood, a pie-shaped lot, given that's on the exterior of the curve of Mohawk Avenue. Second slide is a little bit more of a detail, the site and context plan. This is showing where the proposed building is on the site in relationship to the street, the 2 homes to the left or right. And I'm calling the home to the left to be on the east, which is 22 Mohawk, and the home on the right, which is 26 Mohawk, we're considering that west. Front is north and rear is south. Doesn't exactly line up that way, but that's the language we'll be using tonight. Again, this shows the setbacks on the left and right, which are 6 feet, shows the front setback, which is 20, and the rear setback is 25. Those are the code requirements, and I'll go into detail exactly where the house lies in relation to those setbacks. So that's your site and context plan. Next, giving an overview of the 4 elevations. Front elevation, again, north, consisting of the 2-car garage, The front porch, of course, you'll notice the several stairs going up to the front door because this home is being raised to meet the FEMA floodplain requirements. Moving, just kind of giving a general overview of elevations first. Moving along to the east or side elevation. This is where you'll see the left side of the 2-car garage, which is a single-story element to the structure. And then beyond that, additional rooms, the great room window on the right, and then a bedroom and bathroom window on the second level. So that's your east elevation. Along with on the upper left, you'll see a privacy screen, and that's for the second level balcony off the rear elevation to provide privacy to the folks to the east. Moving next to the next side elevation is the west side, and this is facing 26 Mohawk. And on this, we have basically a two-story element completely throughout. However, obviously, that as you can see, the second story is set back in various levels to provide some articulation, so you don't have a solid massing of a 2-story wall. Whoops. Our side elevation disappeared. Huh. I'm still here. Thank you, Tracy. Trying to go to west, trying to go to rear elevation. Amy, you can you push it one more, Tracy? There we go. Okay, so our rear elevation, which is we're calling oriented south, consisting of another garage door, but this is the back, a second garage door in the back of the garage. The applicants had this in a previous version, just allowing them to have access to the garage for outdoor equipment, lawnmowers, whatever they wish. And then moving on over to the left is the back patio leading into the great room with accordion glass doors, and obviously windows to the right of that. And then to the left, the dining room area, I'm sorry, the study area, there's 3 windows to the left. So again, you can see the elevation that's required with FEMA. As of course, you've noticed the garage is not required to be elevated, so that's at grade. You can see more and completely the second level balcony looking out off of the master suite, and again that privacy screen on the east side again. Just to get, thank you. Just to get a sense of perspectives, these are 2 perspectives that the applicant has provided. One from the front looking up, front left, and then the other of the rear elevations. And now moving into more specifics, the first level floor plan. This is consisting of the main entryway, of course, the front porch, the great room, which includes kitchen, dining room, and living area. And then the front right, you have a guest bedroom, and then a guest bath. And then moving back to the middle of the building, you have the stairway leading up, and then the pantry. And then in the back right is a study with a closet as well. So certainly could be a bedroom. And then you have a covered back deck, as well as the stairways leading to the backyard. This also gives you a perspective of the garage, which can easily accommodate the 2 cars as shown, and also some additional depth, beyond those cars for storage. Yeah, working now. So our second level floor plan consists of 2 bedrooms in the front, a laundry room, and then what they're calling the hall bath or the bath for those 2 bedrooms. And then moving to the back of the building is the master suite in the center, master bedroom in the center, walk-in closet to the left, and then master bath to the right in the back corner. And then you can also see the rear balcony, second level balcony, which is accessed from the master bedroom. In terms of overall project summary, the project in terms of FAR and lot coverage and a number of things, quite a change, going from a very small 985 square foot home exists today to a much larger home. Obviously, your floor area ratio is going from 8% to 35%. The code allows 40%. The lot coverage is going from also 8% to 25%. And again, the code maximum is 40. Setbacks, currently the building is relatively close to the front property line. It's at 15 feet. Actually, I think it actually encroaches in because the front setback is 20. So the existing building is existing non-conforming, too close to the street. The proposed building will be 35 feet from that front property line. Side elevations are relatively the same, existing on the west and proposed on the west is 6. Existing on the east is 8 and proposed on the east is 6. Rear elevation currently 84 feet away and proposed to be 43 feet away. In terms of the height, and I'll talk about this in a little bit more detail, but basically we have a single story home today at 13 feet and the proposed building height is 29 foot 5 inches and the code allows a maximum of 30 feet for building height. Current parking is 1 covered space and proposed will meet the code at 2 covered spaces. The project meets all the requirements of the R1 zoning district and there are no variances being requested. Just to give a little bit more detail about the construction and the height. This is a section of the building cutting through from front to back. So to your left is the front porch, walking into the great room, back to the rear deck and down to the backyard. This gives you a visual of the crawl space and the height of that crawl space is 5 feet. The height of this floor to ceiling height of the first level, the great room and other rooms there is 9 foot 3 inches. And the ceiling height for the second level is 8 feet in rooms that have flat ceilings and actually don't have the exact number in terms of the ceiling height in the master bedroom, which is vaulted. As you can see there, I can imagine the applicants can probably give us that number if you're interested in that. Another section cutting through the opposite direction. If you're facing the building, so slicing across the garage, the great room and the laundry, ceiling heights are the same in those rooms. Here you can see the second level with a flat ceiling and not the vaulted portion of the building. And then I kind of laid it out this way to give you a perspective of the different heights and also to illustrate the impact of the FEMA lift and other aspects of the building. So we have a maximum building height of 29.5. Like I said before, ceiling heights are listed there, which I just mentioned. Garage ceiling height is 11 feet, which is just want to point that out. Probably not a typical garage height, as far as I know. Crawl space, again, to meet the FEMA requirements is approximately 5 feet in height. Roof pitch is 512, and that attic space is 4 feet. So if you wanted to probably, I think it'd be relatively accurate to say that the ceiling height in the master bedroom vaulted area is probably in the neighborhood of 12 feet. But I'm sure the applicants will correct me if that is not correct. Just to give you a sense, you probably all remember this has gone through 2 preliminary reviews. The first preliminary review was back in September of last year, and that's the rendering of the front elevation Obviously, a modern looking building with flat roofs and shed roofs. It also had a detached garage in the back left. And you all provided a number of different comments and feedback to the applicants. And they came back with a simpler in terms of roof design in November. They got rid of that second level balcony on the first on the front elevation and simplified it in a number of ways. At the November prelim, you also, there was, I think there was general discussion and request that the architecture be a little bit more simplified and be more compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. All of the access to the prelims was in your staff report and is also available online. I'm not going to go through all of the different comments that came out of both of those prelims, but in general, it was a request by the commission and I think and by the neighbors for a smaller structure, a structure that's more architecturally compatible with the existing neighborhood. And obviously, after those prelims, the applicant has made quite a few changes and has decided to come before you, not for a prelim, but an official and a formal design review application. So the revisions that have taken place in response to the Planning Commission and the neighbors from the November hearing are reduced ceiling heights overall for a reduction of approximately 9 inches from the previous flat roof design. They went from a flat roof, mid-century design to a more traditional hip roof architecture. All the floor plans and elevations, of course, were updated. They adjusted the second floor setbacks. They adjusted the second floor, so they stepped back and provide wall articulations with the new floor plans and the roof lines. They eliminated the detached garage and went with an attached garage. And they shifted the house approximately 15 feet back away from the street and the sidewalk to reduce the contrast in height with the existing buildings, and also to move the shading that would be cast upon the neighbor to the north, which is 26 Mohawk, to move the shading off of the building, off of 26 Mohawk's roof, and more onto the backyard for potential solar use in the future for 26 Mohawk. And I believe that was a comment directly by the owners of 26. So I'll go into a little bit discussion of the shade analysis. I went to quite a detailed discussion in the staff report. These are kind of the high points. Obviously, I said before, 26 Mohawk to the north is the most impacted. The most shading that is cast upon 26 Mohawk is happening in the winter months, December to March, and predominantly between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. And again, this is based upon the shade study that's in your packet. Like I said, the house was shifted back to try to pull the shadows off the roof. And I did kind of a rough, quantitative analysis to try to give you a sense of how much shading is being cast upon. And if one was to look at, say, 3/4 of the year and at a day and 10 hours during the day, that amount of time there really is not a noticeable amount of shading being cast upon 26 Mohawk, in my opinion, in looking through the shade study. So, in the spring, summer, fall, and about 10 hours out of a 12-hour day, there's not a noticeable increase in shading. Conversely, in the winter months, when the sun is much lower, which is approximately 1/4 of the year, and I apologize, I think there's a typo in the staff report. That should be 1/4, not 3/4. Approximately 1/4 of the year for approximately 2 hours in the morning or so, there is significant shading being cast upon on 26 Mohawk. And again, I can bring up the shade study itself if the commission or the public has once more detailed discussion of the shade analysis, but basically staff was able to make that finding that the shading cast upon this building is not significant. In terms of privacy, again, along with the many pictures in the staff report, I just brought this up to give you a sense of what the windows are for the side elevations. The privacy impacts are only occurring, as far as I can tell, and hearing from the neighbors, are really mainly only occurring from the side elevations, except I think there is a member of the public from Tamalpais, and they did express some concern about the rear balcony, but that's quite a distance. But focusing on the privacy on the side elevations, I've just circled in red. Those are clear story windows, bathrooms, and a laundry room, I believe. And then I just indicated bedrooms, the great room, stairways, and other windows. So generally not, the main windows in those rooms, except perhaps, the two bedrooms that are on the lower right image. Both those bedrooms also have windows facing the street. So that's not their only window. In terms of view analysis, and I believe most of you went out and toured the site and got a sense of some of the neighbors' concerns. This is just an overview of two views from 26 Mohawk and two from 22, and then one from 524 Tamalpais, and then another one from 528. More pictures are in the staff report that hope to give you an even better perspective. And again, with this analysis, staff was in viewing these, and staff was able to draw the conclusion that though there are impacts to views of the skyline and the blue sky above, there are no peaks or slopes or ridge lines or significant architecture or natural features that are being obstructed by the proposed project while looking at the story poles. And lastly, the discussion of compatibility with the neighborhood. And this is one that staff studied quite a bit and discussed quite a bit with fellow staff members, how to meet that finding of whether the building is compatible in a sense of scale and scope and architectural features to the existing neighborhood. These are second stories in the neighborhood, not directly, and the closest one is the upper right, which is 34 Mohawk. That's your closest two-story building to the proposed project, and these other projects are nearby in the general area. So it just gives you an idea of the different types. And I think the most recent is the lower left, which is 38 Lakeside, which is obviously a two-story structure and more of a modern architectural design. That was also a FEMA lift, whereas none of the other buildings, except I believe the bottom right, it was a FEMA lift, but the other three were not. So this is, this is, I think, one of the first brand new buildings I've done where a FEMA lift is required. And so they had the flexibility in completely removing the old building. They have the flexibility of putting it wherever they want within, obviously, the building envelope. Whereas 38 Lakeside, which was almost a complete tear down, it was not. And so they did have to build the building back up on some of the existing footprint. Another analysis and study I did to try to conclude that whether it's compatible with the neighborhood is this chart here, which is a size comparison of the other two-story homes in the neighborhood. All of those that I've taken pictures of, except giving you total living area, not including the garage, your first level square footage, your second level square footage, and then the percentage of each level and lot size. And one thing that jumped out for me is when you look at the project, which is the first or the second row, the project site of 24 Mohawk, you have a second level, which is approximately 43% of the overall building. Whereas the other 4 down below range from a high of 35%, so about 10% less, and all the way down to a low at 22 Seminole is 23%. So in the discussion that I gave you, and in terms of staff's decision to give you 3 options on how to move forward with this project, one was went into detail of how the commission could think about various options to make the home more compatible with surrounding homes and with other 2-story homes in the vicinity. Jumping over to neighborhood outreach, and this is just a real quick list of all the different things that the applicants have done. And I think there are even more items, but this is kind of a summary. They've been working quite diligently since May of last year, so close to a year, in reaching out to the neighbors, in communicating with them, having open houses, sending emails, doing obviously the 2 preliminary reviews, having tours of the home with the story poles, and also the neighbors were very open and allowed you and staff to visit and view the story poles from both 22, 26, and the 2 homes on Tamalpais Drive. So with that, wrapping up, I'll just highlighting the 3 options that I've suggested to the Planning Commission, and the option number 1, which is the one we recommend or feel that is the most prudent way, and to move forward to see if the Planning Commission concurs with staff in that the need to accommodate or need to modify the building to be more compatible with the neighborhood is something that still needs to be accomplished. So that concludes my staff report, and I'm certainly open to any questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boyle. All right, commissioners, do you have any questions for Mr. Boyle? Bob, start with you.
Yeah, Phil, the 512 slope for the hipped roof, is that the same on the garage also? It looked bigger, or looked like it might be different as I looked at it.
I am pretty sure, I'll quickly find the page. Pretty sure they're all the same. Yes, if you turn to sheet A-1, and I have all these electronically if you want me to pull that up. Sheet A-1 shows that all of the roofs are 5 and 12s, including the garage.
Thank you.
Margaret?
I'm just wondering, in a crawl space, when it has to be raised by FEMA, is that crawl space usable for anything? Or does FEMA say it has to be vacant?
FEMA says it has to be vacant.
So
Yes,
you can't use it for storage or anything like that.
Oh, I don't know if, FEMA would, I don't think FEMA would care if you put a ladder and various things, but it's not, your heating and cooling system can't be in that area. So they basically don't want anything that can be damaged and they'll have to pay for.
It's non-occupiable space, right?
Yeah,
So the garage can be within the, does not have to be raised, for example. So it's similar to that. It would be not conditioned space or occupiable space.
And when you raise the house like that, is the floor of that crawl space finished in any way? I'm just curious. There's no regulation.
Again, it can't be finished to be occupiable. it's up to the owner if they want to finish. I mean, some people finish it with a light coat of concrete for rats and other, problems,
I
things
just
like that.
wondered. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Phyllis.
No questions at this time.
Okay. Well, then we'll move directly into the presentation from the applicants. So you guys will step up to the podium over there and make use of the microphone, speak into it as closely as it needs to work.
Testing, do you need to press anything? Okay.
No, you're live.
All right. Thank you very much. We have timed this, so we won't take too much of the time. I know at one point we went really long, so we're trying to be expeditious here. My name is Britt Sales, and this is my husband, Spencer Sales. We're the applicants for 24 Mohawk. Also, we have Alan Sales here. He is our architect of record, and yes, he is Spencer's dad. To reintroduce ourselves, we're a young family. We have a 7-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter, and we're looking to raise our family in this residence. We moved from Corte Madera. We moved to Corte Madera from San Francisco in November of 2019, and we rented in the neighborhood on Seminole. And we really grew to love the neighborhood. We like the family friendliness, very safe. We felt very comfortable raising our kids in this neighborhood. When 24 Mohawk came up for sale, we were very excited and we were able to purchase the property back in June of 2020. I'm a full-time technical program manager. I work in the tech industry. I do work from home ever since COVID and for the foreseeable future. Spencer is a senior construction project manager. He works in the Marin and Sonoma counties. He will be working from home from time to time, but typically he's out in the field. In designing our home, we had a set of important criteria for our family. One was to have an open, secure outdoor space for our kids to run around and play in and family and friends to come visit. 2 was for our bedrooms to be all on a one floor. With our young kids, we do want to be close to them when they sleep at night. And then, as I mentioned, I work from home. Having an office space in the home is really need that for my career. Can't really work with the kids. And then a guest room. We have 2 sets of grandparents and lots of aunts and uncles and cousins that come and visit us, and we'd like to have a space for them to be able to stay. So those are kind of the 4 main criterias when we went in to design this house. Over the past year and a half, we've been working with Corte Madera Planning. Phil's been just fantastic to work with. We've had many meetings with our neighbors who are here today, and we've designed the home a couple times over, as Phil has mentioned, based on the feedback that we got in the study sessions and also from the neighbors. It's been a difficult process looking back on these study sessions. We've come to appreciate this process. We think the home that we have here today is a much better fit for Madera Gardens compared to our very first design. We can kind of see flaws in some of our thinking there, and we do appreciate the feedback that we have received. And we know this has been really challenging for our neighbors. We appreciate all the time and all the effort that it has taken for us to get here today. And we look forward to a productive and valuable discussion with everyone here. In conclusion, we're really excited to get to this point. It's taken a lot of time, and we're excited to talk about our design and any feedback that we have from this group. And we look forward to an approval. I'll hand it over to Spencer, and he'll give you his perspective on our designs, and then Alan can go into a little bit into the technical details of the architecture. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Spencer, Britt's husband. Thank you for your interest in our project and taking the time to be here tonight for our presentation. I would especially like to thank you, the commission, for all your many hours of service in the community. We are very excited to be at this point in the process and are truly hopeful for a positive outcome at the conclusion of the hearing. As Britt mentioned earlier, we've come before you twice in the 2 study sessions to present our plans and get feedback to inform the redesigns of our new home. Outside of the study sessions, we've held several open houses and one-on-one discussions to meet our neighbors and explain our plans and discuss their concerns. In addition, we've exchanged some many numerous emails with them to, talk about the details and, further communicate. We've thought very hard about what we need in our home, and we've fine tuned its placement on the site to arrive at the current plans before you. At just under 3,000 square feet of occupied space, it is a lot larger than the original 1950s homes of Madera Gardens. We understand that. However, we think it's important to note that is, not as big as it could be. Maybe a different owner, spec builder might choose to build a bigger house. We've looked hard at it, and we don't want to build a house that's bigger than we need. It seems like the right size for us, given all the circumstances. Throughout our designs development, this process, we've been consistently challenged by the constraints presented by the FEMA floodplain foundation and our oddly shaped lot. The FEMA foundation for our site is around 5 feet tall, and it creates a formidable first floor for any walls built above grade. They're average around 14 or 15 feet to the top plate, which is just much bigger than any other first floor in the neighboring houses. Our conclusion after looking at this was, that the most efficient and appealing structure is one that would minimize the amount of floodplain foundation. So we have, it was just important to us to try and keep the footprint small, given that the first floor had to be so high up. We've designed the house to have all of our family's sleeping rooms upstairs with the living, work, and formal areas downstairs. This is for us a very functional arrangement that allows us to be a closer family and keep an eye on our kids at night. It leads to a taller structure, yes, but one that has significantly less overall volume and footprint than a equally sized single-story house. On the subject of the height, one bright note that I think Phil pointed out in the staff report over the weekend is that there might be a drafting error or misinterpretation of the elevations, that it's actually taller than by 4 or 5 inches than it needs to be. So we'd be thrilled to lower that, at the time of building permit or whenever. Lastly, we feel that this home will be an outstanding new addition to the Corte Madera community, with beautiful new construction, tasteful front landscape treatments, the best in modern energy efficiency and implementation of environmentally sensitive technologies. The home will have gray water, landscape irrigation, solar voltaic panels, solar hot water heaters, house battery, electric vehicle chargers, ductless heat pump heating, among other sustainable features that we're planning. It will contribute to the fire safety of the community with modern fire alarms and fire sprinkler systems that were not present in the existing homes in the development. In conclusion, we are truly thrilled to be able to present this design review package here tonight and restarting our future in Madera Gardens. We look forward to answering any questions you may have, and in addition to hearing any more input from the community. And we're hopeful for a vote upon the conclusion of this hearing. That I'd like to hand it over to my dad, our architect. A few more points.
Good evening, Alan Sales, architect. I have about 5 points to make. At the first study session, you directed us to change, as Phil pointed out, from the contemporary architecture to be more consistent with the majority of homes in the community. The second design, we went with the mid-century modern, which in my opinion represented about 20% of the homes, and this was still looked down on. The current design, third design, which I am this before you tonight, we took considerable time to address your concerns in terms of style and appearance and architecture. We are matching the majority of the home's architectural elements and materials and shapes. The only architectural element that we have no control over is that we have to start 5 feet higher than everybody else around us because of FEMA. The height contrast between our home and the other homes. You suggested we move move the house back, increase the front setback. As Phil pointed out, the existing home encroaches 5 feet into the front setback. The first design and the second design, we made the setbacks match the code requirement of 20 feet. And we were advised to if we wanted to do a second story home, to move it back a few more feet. We moved it back an additional 15 feet. That makes the front setback 35 feet. So yes, we are taller, but we're set back over twice as far as the original home. We were asked to attach the garage to the house and eliminate the detached garage. We did this by moving the garage forward, eliminating the long driveway, something that the neighbor to the left had also requested. We originally felt that the detached garage was the best configuration for the site, but we have moved as requested and suggested by you from the last study session. We were told to reduce the width of the second story from the front as it faced the street. Our original design was a stack 40 feet wide, 2 stories tall. Second design, we went down to 32 feet, which was a 20% reduction, and we were asked to do more. The current design is at 25 feet wide. That's a 40% reduction in that front facade second story. Next item. We have, as everybody's saying, we have a unique lot. We have the narrowest lot in the front of the neighborhood. It looks on paper 50 feet. But if you look at it at the site plan, you'll see that the neighbor to the right at 26 driveway encroaches several feet onto our property, and it cuts across at an angle. And by the time it gets to the curb cut, we virtually have no usable curb. We have no place to park except across the street or on the site. And on the converse, to the rear, we have probably one of the largest rear property lines at about 112 feet. And we also have one of the largest lots at 11,500 square feet, probably double the average size lot in the community. Our lot coverage at 40% is 4,686 square feet. We are currently proposed at 3192. We're at 25% of the site area. The FAR 40% as well. We are at 35% or 5% under. And keep in mind, about 1/3 of that is garage. And so we actually have only 3,000 square feet of living area, but because 1/3 of it is garage, that is at grade, and that's not subject to the 5-foot lift as required by FEMA. So 1/3 of the house is much lower than the rest. In a quick summation, we're not asking for any exceptions. We meet height, setback, coverage, all the requirements of the R1 zone. And we step the mass left and right. Second story moves in. We step the mass from front to back so that the second story steps back, and we repeat that on the rear. We feel that the design changes we've made have made for a better project, but we'll listen for your comments. We feel the design should be acceptable to the community and look forward to a conditioned approval. I want to make one comment about the second story. The other second stories you approved represent about 11, 12, 13% of the building, the site area. Our project meets about 10, 11, 12. We're in that same range of our site area. So we're all those projects approved before you, ahead of us, all our second stories are within, I'd say, 10 to 13% of the actual site area, that second story. So I see it as quite consistent. Thank you.
Before you guys vanish, I'd like to have you stand there. I'm going to check with the commissioners to see if they have any questions for you that will take advantage of you up there while we got you. Phyllis, do you have any questions for them?
Not at this time. I wanted to hear all of the presentations and then question.
Thank you. Dr. Bundy.
I did notice that the garage from the story poles at 22 seem to really be fairly significant. And looking at the slope, some of that may be related to the fact that the ceiling height, I guess, is 11 foot. Was there a specific reason that the garage was designed to be that tall?
Well, there's two reasons. One is that when the garage has to sit on the ground and the first floor has to start 5 feet up, when you attach the garage to the house, it looked funny. It didn't flow proportionately. When the garage was detached in the back and it was lower, but when we bring it out and attach it, it didn't look right. It looked divorced from the house because of the lift. The other reason is that extra height inside will be very helpful because the mechanical equipment and the batteries and stuff we can wall mount and start at 5 feet. So if we don't have to use floor area for mechanical equipment, they can wall mount, such as your power wall. And there's a lot of furnace systems that mount horizontally or intend to be hung from the ceiling down. So
it'll maybe add, and you can confirm this because I think you mentioned to me once, we really struggled with figuring out a way to connect the house to the garage. And I've seen it in some of the other floodplain homes that you have to create a landing and stairs to make that transition from a garage into the building. And we struggled with that over the last couple of months, and we actually didn't really figure out a way. So we left the stairs out. So the garage you'll see is not actually showing a connection into the house. We feel like we can do it. We're somewhere in the kitchen when we kind of fine tune the kitchen layout. And I remember being advised that we needed some ceiling height in the garage to be able to make that transition of a door from the house into the garage to be able to get down into the garage.
Thank you.
All right. Margaret, do you have any questions for these folks?
I'm wondering, did you ever consider a one-story home?
Yeah, it's obviously come up a lot in correspondence with the neighbors, and we drew a lot of layouts when we were first figuring out what to do with the house. The problems that we encountered that we didn't like or that didn't work for us was that the house has a very narrow front, and to meet parking 2 cars off street, the majority of the front facing portion of the house was going to be taken up by parking or maybe a front door. And then what that would have done is put the garage, let's say, in the front portion of the house, and then that rest of the house was going to kind of wrap around it. Similar to 38 Lakeside, we've seen those plans, and the typical layout on the square shaped lots of the neighborhood is that you have house, garage, and then house behind the garage. The challenge with designing that on a pie shaped lot is it continues to step or get wider. You have a lower garage in the front of the house, and then awkward, taller house behind it, and kind of enclosing the lower garage. So we really didn't, or what we could have done is maybe built house way down one property line, or had, kind of a right angle shaped house. So it just did not really lay out well for us. We didn't find a footprint that we fell in love with that, was of a reasonable size. So it just didn't really work.
And we should say, we started out in that direction. We started out when we bought the property, our whole idea was to remodel the existing house. We wanted to just remodel the back and keep that house there. And we had lots of good discussions with Tracy on, can we just lift the back portion, keep the house that's there? But then obviously we found out that wasn't, that wouldn't meet FEMA requirements. And we can't lift the existing house that's there because it's slab on grade and you can't lift that house. So it took us a while to get to that conclusion. And I mean, Alan drew a couple plans for us that were single story and they just didn't lay out right. So we did look at it.
Anything else? Okay, well, thank you. I don't have any questions for you guys, so we'll relieve you of your standing. Sit. Okay, so now that we've heard from the applicants, it is time to take some public comment on this. So I'm going to say to the people who are in the room that we'll get you to keep a line going behind the podium over there and make sure that you're right behind the person who's speaking and that we can move along with this. I have this terrible red timer right here that will count down from 3 minutes and hit 0 when the time is up. So those of you who would like to comment, let's open public comment, and we'll follow that by Zoom comment. So let's start with people in the room here. So we get this live action going. Anybody going to stand up?
Start. Someone's got to be first.
Hi, I'm Sean Westerhoff. I live at 26 Mohawk. Thank you guys very much for coming to visit and checking out the story polls in person. I think that was a really important piece of this. I've been super impressed by the process of the design reviews. So again, thanks for the attention, and Phil, of course, for all the information you've gathered. I think the only thing I really wanted to point out is just how different our place will be. And it's hard because the challenges are real with this FEMA thing. I really do appreciate that. However, with all that said, the mass is still so overwhelming from our property that it will really dramatically change the home forever. If you noticed one of the pictures from our kitchen, almost 100% of the sky is gone, not with shade, but with building, with real material. And so you just lose what we have today. So even though it's considered secondary in a view, it's primary, to us. It's a big piece of the property and the side yard that we have now and enjoy with the garden. It's just a really difficult thing to get over. So from my perspective, I just want to make sure that architecturally, we're just trying to lessen the mass of the second floor. And looking at the percentages, I think Phil did a good job of pointing out that it is very high in the percent that's upstairs. So looking for compromise, looking for ways that we can make this property work, and for you guys, just to make it work. I thought that was just another thing to reiterate. Again, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, I gotta move this because I'm short. I'm Stacy and I also live at 26 Mohawk. I'll go through a few things. I first want to say thank you to Phil and to the commission for coming by the house. I thought that was really important and impactful for you all to see it from our perspective. One of the things I noticed is that the comps aren't really good examples because they don't, our portion of the neighborhood is very different. It's generally small lots. And the fact that there happen to be a few lots on the corner that are big doesn't actually change or affect how.
Music.
Can you hold on a second, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Oh, is that my phone? I don't know.
It was
It's on the front-
competing
It's
with
in the front
you.
pocket. I'm sure it's my son trying to ask. Okay, I think we're good. So it's often brought up that there are examples of these other two-story homes, but none of them are actually in our pocket of the neighborhood. And we appreciate having a modest neighborhood with homes that actually suit the lot sizes. And while there are a few lots that are larger, and they like to say that, look, we stay within our lot allotments. In fact, it does negatively impact our portion of the neighborhood. They talk about in a lot of the specs about living space as their specs, but the total square footage feet of the project is what should be considered. The total size is what impacts the neighbors and neighborhood. The garage and covered porch structures are part of what's going to impact how we all feel as neighbors in the neighborhood. It's massive. It's just massive compared to the homes in our end of the neighborhood. The mass and size of it does not fit and will negatively impact us. The house size that they're building is generally seen in places like Kentfield or Tiburon, not in our pocket of Madera Gardens. They have said that they have, quote, made concessions and that they've met with neighbors, but none of those actually impact, none of those have actually impacted the majority of the bulk and size of the space. The redesign based on neighbors, but there's been no size changes, doesn't feel like they've actually been contemplating how this is going to impact our neighborhood. We're a neighborhood that is out front all the time. We're a neighborhood that supports one another. We're a neighborhood that's been there I've been here for 27 years in my home, and I understand change and wanting progress. That's really important. I think all of us want that, but it needs to be done in a way that actually takes into account how we as a community live together. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to make a comment? Anybody else going to stand up to the microphone?
Good evening, Tor White. I'm from 526 Tamalpais, directly behind, next door to Tim and Mike. After 30 years here, I definitely get why you wanted to move here. Great neighborhood. As I wrote in the letter in the beginning, just the FEMA thing alone makes the one story a bit intrusive. The size that you have is, as I walk up Mohawk every day, the building, the size of 26 floating in the air, it looks like Up, the movie, floating up into the air. It's my backyard. It's going to impact what I look at. It's a giant wall. I'm not thrilled about it. I wouldn't be thrilled about a one story, but there's no way I'd ever be thrilled about a two story. So, you know, a pilot is what it is. It's a difficult challenge to deal with. I appreciate that you looked at it. I hope you could find something if we're fortunate enough not to have a two-story in our backyard. Your comment about putting in a garage to block your view of the waste treatment plant was to use a garage the size of the existing house, almost as big as my house is. And that structure that you did not want to look at is probably a 10 by 10 and 8 or 9 feet tall. So the little piece that I'm looking at that I've accepted is there, and the floodlight that comes on occasionally, I live with it. But having an entire house floating above the existing apex of all the other homes, I would not personally ever want to impose that on neighbors. And I know you're up against a challenge bringing something like that into a neighborhood of people that really get along well together. So I hope we're successful in having you see that it's not something we want to see.
Thank you.
Last piece. The 2 stories existing on top of a garage or an existing house doesn't have the type of impact that the 5 foot does. And I just wish the planning department would say, you know, if you got a 5 foot lift, you can't have 24 feet on top of that. The original design at 24. Now you've moved back, which is closer, and it's gone up to 35, it looks like, or at least 32.
All right. Thank you very much. We do have someone who got up. So great.
I'm Don Wilberg, 13 Seminole. I've been in the neighborhood for 35, 40 years, somewhere in there. I'd like to ask a question. Phil, are they in violation of any of our ordinances at all?
Well,
That is what we do.
I think that we don't do a Q&A here. We don't get
Well,
into a dialogue.
I know, but my understanding is that they've.
No,
that
it's
there
in the
aren't
staff
any
report. They are not.
violation. There
Right.
wasn't any violations the first time they went through that I understand, and I don't understand why it is that we get to have emotions and opinions rule our situation here. You have set up a situation here that's really pretty awful. You have people that now are angry with these people. You're splitting our communities with these rules and regulations. You're pitting neighbor against neighbor. And this is really awful stuff. You guys should be trying to bring everybody together as opposed to creating a situation where a community is against each other. I've been to hundreds of meetings like this, and I see it all the time by the rules that are brought up, that are made up by the cities. And I've been here for 35, 40 years, and I have never been asked once to vote for any regulation. Not once. But there are literally hundreds of regulations in our books, and it's made by 5 or 10 people in our town, and that controls everything. That's called central planning. I'm going through right now European history with my grandson at Redwood, and every time they talk about central planning, economy goes down, the countries go down, everything disappears. Central planning, because only a small small group of elites make the decisions about what should happen in our town. Private property is the key to freedom. And we need to respect that. And you need to let this go. They've already been through this 3 times. Pass this and let them go.
Thank you very much. All right, so if anyone else is going to, yeah, I know, if anyone else is going to speak, I'd like to have you up at the podium when she finishes. Thank you. Right, please go ahead.
I wasn't actually going to get up and speak because I did get to speak to everybody this past week. But with all due respect, just because you do have the space and can stay within the law, it doesn't mean that you need to take up all that space. And the way that it impacts us in our living area is big. All we're going to be looking out at from our kitchen and our living area is somebody else's home. And that's a big impact on me and my family. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. I'm Dave Denning. I'm at 19 Mohawk. My feeling is, first off, no offense to the architect, but he has no idea how to design a house that fits into our neighborhood. He likes to build a house that you might see on the waterfront living in a loft. You guys want a loft. You want 10-foot ceilings, 9-foot ceilings. It would seem to me if you were really trying to accommodate us, the first thing you could do is knock 2 feet off the building by having 8-foot ceilings. Now, maybe you're taller than me. Maybe you need 10 feet, 9 feet, but that was one of the first things I noted, is that you could easily lower the height of the building. And that's what a lot of people are seeing. They're seeing a big giant block. I walked on the path behind these houses today, and when you see the story poles from there, it's like, oh my God, because it doesn't have the existing house hiding what's really going up there. These size comparison to other 2-story homes in the neighborhood, I would think from there, you could get a clue as to why people don't like your house. It's the biggest house in Madera Gardens by a fair amount, not including the garage. And these other people, and don't think there wasn't objections to 38 Lakeside because I didn't want a dentist office moving into my neighborhood, but there it is. 34 Mohawk, he's got a small second story. He kept the hip gabled roofs. and kind of fooled us, to tell you the truth. No, we didn't necessarily want that, but he was able to disguise his remodel to something that you kind of look at and you go, well, it's not so bad. The 5-foot thing, I really feel sorry for you guys. That's a tough nut to crack, but like I said, you can eliminate 2 feet of that by having 8-foot ceilings. You know, and I know that's not as dramatic, and you talk about being efficient, and you know, heating a 9-foot ceiling versus an 8-foot ceiling is not efficient. So there's that. So, you know, I feel like you grudgingly gave in a few things, but the height of the building still, but I guess you could raise it another 5 or 6 inches and be 1 inch below the maximum. And yes, it's legal. And yes, they could do it. And yes, again, we're talking society here. We're talking about groups of people that, like she was saying, you know, we all hang out together. Your kids are going to be hanging out with a lot of kids that live up and down our street. I don't know about this libertarian claptrap, but that's another story. Anyway, I just want to say, how would you consider lowering the ceilings and knocking a couple feet off of the total height? And when we talked about, was the second story actually reduced? Okay,
Thank you very much.
To address the commission. Adam, does that look better?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm not going to take too much time. My name is Tim Rose. I live at 524 Tamalpais. I think I know pretty much everybody here. I just wanted to make a couple of points. A lot of the details of my comments will hopefully be read out loud in a few minutes. But our biggest concern is just the sheer magnitude. I'm just reiterating what everybody else has said. A couple of years ago, we did a modest remodel. You know, we explored going up a flight of stairs, tore my neighbor over here. We've had plenty of conversations. We decided to keep it modest. And we've had tour over for Christmas dinner. We have a great relationship. Yes, everything is in code. Supposedly, it's not my area of expertise. I don't pretend to be that, but you know, we're looking to invite people in our companies where our kids are going to play together, and I hope that we can figure out a time where our kids can play together as well. The fact that this is a picture from our backyard where my kids play every day. I work from home every day. And from inside our living room, it's taking up a good 85 to 90% of the blue sky that we enjoy. It's not a view. We don't have the luxury of Golden Gate Bridge view or Mount Tam, but it's important to us and it's important to my kids for playing in the backyard. I mean, those are the big points. So I appreciate everything that you guys are doing to kind of intermediate this. I disagree with some of the things he said. I think you guys are doing a great job. I respect the process. So thank you guys all very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mike Peak. I live at 528 Tamalpais Drive. I've been here 29 years. And the things, the story poles don't tell the true story. You know, it looks like you can see through them, you see green, you see all that. I can see the hill above Neil Cummins where my daughter went to school. Phyllis picture that you had there doesn't tell the true story. But once that massive building goes up, that's gone. The shade on the window goes down. I wish you could do what you can, but for me, it's just the height of the building. It doesn't fit in. To me, it doesn't show respect for the neighborhood. I did some work in my house. I could have gone up, told a woman with a pitchfork out there and burned the house down. But so I tried to do what was on my lot. I have 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a dining room, a sunroom, and it fits on my lot. And I wish you could find another way. For me, it's the same thing. It's the height. And I want to be able to see out my backyard instead of a wall there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, seeing no other approaches to the microphone, and we'll go to Mr. Boyle.
Actually, go ahead.
Yeah. All right. I was going to see if there's any public comment at tcmmail.org, or that there might be any hands raised, which I don't see.
There was a hand raised previously. So if that's okay, Chair Chase, I give them a minute. I'll
We'll
check
give
the
them a
public
beat here
comment
to
email
think about
first.
it. And nothing on the inbound email.
Nothing on the email. If anyone's having trouble raising their hand on the Zoom call, you can email publiccomment@tcmmail.org. Raise hand feature should be on the bottom of your Zoom window.
All of the letters and comments that came in today have been posted online.
There's a hand raised.
There we go. Okay, do your magic and bring Chris Tufts over, or however you want it. You've done it. All right.
Chris, go ahead. You should be able to unmute yourself and speak.
How about now?
We can hear you.
Great. Sorry about that. I'm Chris Tufts and I live in the neighborhood with our new family on Birch Avenue. I've been included in the correspondence between the family and the neighbors and have seen the redesign that the family has listened to and changed their home to account for the feedback. This neighborhood is about community and should hope to gain more family like the sales. I've been really struck by the comments expressed tonight that were never expressed in the email with the family when they reached out to the community. And I'm a bit frustrated, I guess, hearing this vehement opposition now. So maybe to step back and give context, I was able to live in a 2-story house in this neighborhood. And I commit that when any of my next door neighbors want to modernize their homes in this 1957, 1958 neighborhood and seeks to build a second story that might take up some arbitrary portion of my view or my sky, I will be here supporting that project. So I think this family welcomed a lot of the feedback it got and deserves to be able to have a compliant, beautiful new home in my neighborhood. And I hope you approve it.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other hands up at the moment.
No emails have come in either, Chair Chase.
Okay. With that said,
Chairman Chase, I just want to address Mr. Tim Rose had mentioned that he submitted an email, and I think you had mentioned, Tim, that you were hoping it would be read at this meeting. I did respond back to Tim that normally that when submittals are sent to us prior to the meeting, I believe yours was sent on Monday, it was included in the packet and it was posted on the website and is here. So I just wanted to clarify that for Mr. Rose, that unless it's the chair's wish, staff doesn't intend to read your email onto the record.
Right. All right. Thank you. Yeah, it's you were able to speak at the microphone, so and the letter is in the record. So I think that's appropriate. Okay. With that said, we'll close the public comment section of this meeting and take it back up here to the dais and start the discussion with commissioners on this hearing. So we've heard a lot of public comment and we've all visited the site and we've seen with our own eyes what people have spoken to. So Margaret, I'm going to start with you. Hear what you have to say.
Well, first, it's great to be here in person and to say thank you to Phil, who went above and beyond. At 2 o'clock in the morning, we were getting emails, staying up all night, not worth it, Phil, but thank you. Phil's pulling all-nighters after college.
Wait a second.
Yeah, but it's appreciated very much. One thing, I mean, I read this a few times and I guess I'm going to address the idea of visual bulk, which is one of the policies that is appreciated throughout all the neighborhoods, I believe. And I have to say, I really like the house. It's a beautiful house. I think it's really a great house for a different lot, for a different neighborhood. I think the for my taste and my style, which isn't necessarily your style, I think this house is an improvement each time it's been improved in design. And I think it's a beautiful, beautiful home. I just don't see how it's going to be compatible with the other homes in that neighborhood, because it really does impact specifically, from what I could see, number 22 and number 26. Number 22, one of their windows, that's all you see, is the wall of the home, the solid wall. The whole window is that wall, with the exception of a small little corner in the top. Even if it's not a beautiful view, a picture postcard view, it's a view of the air. I grew up in New York and I had more of a view. It's not so much a view as just seeing some kind of space outside, not an apartment building looking wall. And there's one part of the general plan that says we have to recognize the need in certain circumstances for vertical expansion. I understand that, but perhaps you need to think that this isn't really that circumstance, because you have so much land that you can do something really creative on, raising it. And there are a number of houses which I have admired in the neighborhood raised above that FEMA line and still maintain a really beautiful aspect and with lots of space. And I think given the space that you have and the situation there, and the fact that you have neighbors on either side of you and behind you on Tamalpais that really will be impacted, and especially the vegetable garden, because as far as I could see from the shade studies, it's going to be shady all the time. I think you need to rethink your the mass that you're planning to put on that lot, or you know, have a different lot. That's the best I can say.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay, so I'll move over to my right here and ask Dr. Bundy for his contribution.
Yeah, just in addressing the home and the changes that have been made to it, I'm really impressed with the way it looks. I agree with like Margaret that this is an impressive, really great looking home. I've actually liked all of the designs that you've come up with, but like Margaret, I've had difficulty, fitting it on this lot. We've always approved second stories on applicants that decide that they can't just go horizontal, that's not going to work for them. But the second stories are usually debated, come before us several times, and are often changed a bit. In contrast to what you're trying to do with the second story, most of the prior applicants that have come forward that we've eventually approved have really tried to go for a smaller second story with master bath, master bedroom, maybe an office, walk-in closets, and keep the bedrooms for the kids on the first floor. And most of them have said that was their intent, to be able to have some separation. Now, maybe some of these applicants had a little bit older kids, but I don't know. But anyway, I think it does have a significant impact, but I think you're really going in the right direction. I think the hip roof really helps fit it in. I think the architectural elements and details are really good. I'd like to see the height of the garage lowered a bit so that the roof element is not so high. I appreciate what Spencer said in relationship to trying to get into the garage from the house or from the kitchen, and how do you really work that out, and whether there's a step up with the roof next to the house. I don't know. I'm trying to visualize that, understand the difficulty in trying to make it look right when it is not having to be raised to the 5 foot as the house is. The other approvals that we've given for second stories, they've all had significant setbacks, usually around the perimeter. Things are usually located more centrally, especially in relationship to the homes on each side, even if they go to the back wall. And I think it's hard to get significant setbacks when you've got that much living space you're trying to accommodate in that second story. So I have similar concerns with Margaret about the bulk, but I think, there can be a second story that can be put together on this lot. It may have somewhat less impact on some of the neighbors, but they're probably still not going to be happy with the second story, but there would be less bulk, somewhat less impact. And I think it's there. I think you're working on it.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Oh, now for Phyllis,
Okay.
ready to go. Yes.
All right. I made some notes as I went through this yesterday and today, so I'll read part of it. But first, I'd like to get some facts straight for everybody. Number one, and I will not say who said what, you know who you are. Just because there is no variance necessary does not mean it's an automatic approval. That is the basic limit of what is allowed. If that was not so, you wouldn't have a planning staff, you wouldn't have a planning commission. So that's a joke. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but let's keep facts straight. The other is, I've been on this commission for 12 years. I was a local elected official for 24 years before that, and I've worked for 2 legislators, and I have never seen a cabal or a pressure group put together like I saw on this application. We listen to individual opinions. You don't have to gather together in a group to attack an application you don't like. Reading this, I was thinking of, well, are they going to head over to the house? Are they going to have pitchforks or tar and feathers for the people? So let's try to deal not with personalities, but with facts. Okay, dealing with facts at 24 Mohawk. The house is beautiful. I mean, my degrees are in architecture. It's a beautiful house. It's too big. Not only by mass, but the visual perception. The top floor has to be reduced and set back more, especially on the sides. Phil doesn't have it up anymore. When you see the drawing, yes, you set back this on the sides towards the front of the house, and then it, if you pardon this stupid term, bulged out. You've got a walk-in closet that could be a room. Nobody's got that much clothes. Don't worry about it. The bathrooms jut out towards the back. It has to come back more. The rooms could be smaller, looking at the size of the rooms. The living room, great room, it was 23 by 18. Doesn't have to be that big. If you took off on every room 1 foot in width and 1 foot in length, you'd be reducing this house a lot. You've got some pretty big rooms there. The balcony, and I did see in that 35-page set of emails that we got today that it was important to you. If you use it twice, it's going to be probably 2 more times than you will use it. The privacy wall is 4 feet tall and for the balcony on the side of 22. That's blocking another 4 feet of their view of the sky, of seeing air. You're not going to use the balcony. You want to sit and look at the yard, go downstairs and sit outside. We have nice weather here. I would put those 2 bedrooms downstairs. I know you said that you want the children near you. I've raised a bunch of kids. They survived me and I survived them. As they get older, you're not going to want them next to you if you don't have to have them. You're going to love the idea you can go upstairs and they're not up there too. And they're going to love the fact they can be downstairs and make noise and not have you hollering at them. So please reconsider having those 2 bedrooms where you want them. Let's see. Seeing the story poles, we as a commission may have been in error in having you set the house back as far as we did. We did think it should be set back away. But looking at the story poles and the effect it's having on the neighbors' yards, you should consider bringing it more forward and to see if that will work better. And let's see. And as I said before, the upper story side setbacks are totally inadequate, especially the sides. And I too don't see a reason to have the garage at 11 feet. That to me has absolutely nothing to do with whether you need a stairway to walk, to go up the 5 feet into the house. I mean, and I noticed the pictures of the roofs were 512. Consider 412 instead. That could make a difference also. Just things, as I say, it's not only the mass itself. This is a very large house. But it is the perception. It's the way when you drive up the street, no matter which direction you're coming from, as you go around that curve, you see this house and it looms at you. I just think, as I say, that the mass must be reduced. And you can still have all the rooms you want, but make them smaller. And as I say, certainly diminish the size of the upstairs. If you look at the other ones that Phil showed, in there, they're not big rectangles or big squares. They're shaped. There was one of them, and I don't remember the number, where it seemed almost like a U-shaped. Where in the middle, it was back an awful lot, and then on each side, it came forward and stuff like that. Using a rectangle or square up there really adds to that perception of mass. So I think that's about it. Now that I insulted everybody.
Thank you, Phyllis. For my part, I'm not going to repeat everything that I agree with in the other commissioners, but I agree with a fair amount of what has been said. So the house is a beautiful house. Excuse me. It's well designed, I think, for a house. It is simply just too big for this location. It's too big on the lot. It's too big in bulk, and it's too big in comparison to the neighborhood. I think that there would be some creative thinking to figure out how to step it back some more. And once the sizes of the rooms are reduced, you might be able to create a more attainable relationship to the other homes in the neighborhood. I can't say that it hasn't been creative so far, but I think that it needs to get thought through, start from a blank pad and see what you can do with this thing to utilize perhaps more of the FAR. And put more on the ground floor, less on the top floor, get it down into those percentages that are common in the neighborhood. You know, I think on other fronts, the palette of materials is very nice. I think the windows and the exterior fenestration is very nice. It's just too big and too looming over the neighboring properties, and it's too big on the street. This is a very tight little compact neighborhood. And I think that when you drive around that corner, you see this, it looks like, I dare I say, a McMansion in the corner of the properties there. And it's just too big. It would throw the neighborhood very much out of whack. So with that said, I think that we're all in basic agreement here for this. And I would entertain a motion for this project based on our options, which are 1, 2, and 3 in the staff report. Option 1 was to have any continuance for this while you guys make modifications to the proposed plan to bring the 2 levels of the home more in alignment with each other in terms of scale, composition, relationship. This redesign should be harmonious with surrounding residences and with previous second-story additions and 2-story homes that have been approved in the area and similar neighborhoods in Corte Madera. Under this option, the commission will continue this public hearing. The other one is to deny it or to approve it. We're not going to approve it, so I don't think we need to deny this, but I will ask for a motion on this.
I'll make the motion for option 1. My first inclination was to deny it because that would force you to start from scratch. And sometimes you can tweak things just so much, and that happened. We went through this with the hotel for 3 years. Everybody was trying to work together. It didn't happen. I do think that you should try at least one more time to make it more compatible with the neighborhood. So as I say, my motion would be to go with the continuation.
I'll second that.
All right, then. Let's take a vote.
Commissioner Bundy,
Yes.
Commissioner Bendel,
Yes.
Vice Chair Metcalf,
Yes.
Chairman Chase.
Yes. So,
and I think the staff will work with the applicant with regards to the continuation and when that actually would be ready for a return to the Planning Commission. And we'll work with the applicant if they have other options available to them as well.
all right. So this will start a dialogue for the continuation with staff. That's where this goes. Okay. Thank you all very much for showing up here and attending the first in-person commission meeting in 2 years. So,
appreciate it.
Thank you.
all right, we'll take a short break here.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah. All right, we're going to resume here and we're going to go to the second half of our agenda, which I hope is not as lengthy, but
That a hit for Adam?
equally important. So I will introduce this item. This is a public hearing to consider proposed ordinance amendments and additions of guidelines, additional guidelines related to the town's inclusionary housing policies affecting new housing development in Corte Madera. So Martha, you've written a great deal about this. And it's yours to take away here.
Good evening, Chair Chase and members of the commission. It's very nice to see you in person tonight. You will be holding a public hearing to consider proposed ordinance amendments and adoption of guidelines related to the town's inclusionary housing policies. As you may recall, you discussed this item at a workshop last month. We had a discussion on the existing inclusionary policies and talked about potential changes. And in response to the Planning Commission's feedback, ongoing coordination with partners at other Marin County agencies and recommendations that were included in a report from the consultant Strategic Economics, the town has drafted proposed ordinance amendments and inclusionary housing requirement policy for adoption. Adam and I will be doing a joint presentation this evening, and we do plan to stop periodically to see if you have any questions. Tracy, if you could start the presentation. Next slide. Next slide. Many California jurisdictions have adopted inclusionary zoning ordinances. These are policies and practices that mandate the provision of affordable housing units as part of market rate developments. And it's a tool that can be used to increase the supply of affordable units. Inclusionary zoning must strike a balance that facilitates the construction of new affordable units, but does not unduly impact overall housing production. And there are a variety of policy considerations, including the percentage of affordable units, minimum project size, affordability targets, and alternative means of compliance. Next slide. The current housing element was adopted in 2015, and it outlines the town's housing policies and goals for an 8-year planning period. There is an existing implementation program regarding monitoring our affordable housing ordinance. And the purpose of this implementation program is to ensure that our policy is achieving the desired purpose. Next slide. As you are well aware, the town received a grant, an Sb2 grant in 2019. We've been working with other Marin County agencies on several projects. And tonight is the discussion of the inclusionary zoning ordinance, which is the last project to be completed. Next slide. We've been working with 6 other agencies on this project. All of the agencies, with the exception of Fairfax and San Anselmo, have existing policies. And one of the goals of the project is to create a common inclusionary policy. Next slide. This slide shows the existing inclusionary housing requirements. Our current requirement is a 25% affordable set aside. It applies to all projects that are 1 unit or more. And the affordability targets are 5% very low, 10% low, and 10% moderate. In addition, projects that are less than 10 units can either provide 1 affordable low-income unit, or they can pay an in lieu fee. And projects that are 10 units or more are required to provide affordable housing on site. And obviously the percentage requirement is 25%. So as an example, a project that is 12 units would be required to provide 3 affordable units. Next slide. We will now be going over the inclusionary housing policy recommendations. And there are several recommendations we'll be discussing, and after each policy consideration, we'll be pausing for any questions that you may have. Now let's turn it over to Adam.
All right, thanks, Martha, and good evening, commissioners. So I'm going to start this conversation, and please feel free to interrupt if you want to ask questions as we go over a particular topic. And I'm going to have Martha back me up as well if I miss something that I should be saying. But let's see. So if you can go to the next slide. I'm going to start with the easy stuff. And then if you go to the next slide, please. And then we'll get progressively a little bit more complex. But really just following up on what Martha just spoke to you about, our existing affordable housing set aside for residential development projects is 25%. As we've discussed at the prior workshop, and as included in the strategic economics report that was prepared by our consultants, really moving that percentage down to 20% is more in line with actually constructing feasible residential development projects. 25% at this point is too burdensome, really, and requires too many subsidies as part of a development project to make that work. And so bringing it back down to 20% is consistent with other Bay Area jurisdictions, and is what several of the other jurisdictions we're working with in Marin County are going to go with in terms of proposing a new requirement. So that's pretty simple. Next slide, please. And now we're going to talk about where that threshold begins in terms of when you start to require that 20% requirement for affordable housing within a residential development project. As we discussed currently, that we do have a requirement for a 1-unit project, and you would be subject to the town's current fee or building that 1 unit as a low-income unit, which would never really be an option for somebody. But there would be theoretically a requirement to basically pay an affordable housing fee in lieu of providing that unit on site for 1-unit project. Currently, that is actually $0 based on the formula that we actually have in our municipal code. And so thus the reason we are doing, one of the reasons why we're doing this. But ultimately, we felt based on some feedback we got from the commission, but also based on the dramatic increase in fees that would be assigned to a 1-unit project, as we'll talk about in the affordable housing fee later. We felt it was better suited for the town to go with a 2-unit minimum threshold for a residential development project. Yes. Commissioner Metcalf. Yeah.
I'm mentioning something Jim Rizzo was in here that he was asking me about yesterday. He was concerned about what would be a 1-unit project if you are exempting the single family ADU, et cetera.
Well, yes, and so actually currently a single family residence would not be exempted. The proposal would be that we would exempt a single family residence, an ADU, so it would not apply to a 1-unit project.
Okay, because he was asking what I knew because he was concerned if he builds a house, let's say he builds a house on spec, not for a client.
Correct.
That
you
have to pay it in.
You would not under the proposed ordinance that we have before you tonight. And just we will, since I know it's unfortunate we don't have Commissioner Rizzo here, but I think at the end of the presentation, Martha is going to relay some of the conversations and comments that we got from Commissioner Rizzo. So that may be helpful for the discussion before we get there. Yeah. So you can see that's where the proposal is to start the actual requirement at a 2-unit project, not a 1-unit project. And we can get into more of that if you'd like. There are some, I will say that there is a little bit of a divergence in opinion or thinking, I should say, amongst our colleagues in other jurisdictions. Some feel that it actually would be good. They don't have a current requirement for a 1-unit project having an affordable housing requirement or an affordable in lieu fee. But they are going to go that direction, it sounds like, or at least propose going that direction. And I think some of that has to do with thinking about affirmatively furthering fair housing and some of the ability to recoup some monies for affordable housing, even with the development of single family homes. But that is not what we're proposing in front of you this evening. Okay, next slide.
Adam, I have a question. When you say it would start at 2 units.
Correct.
Does that mean someone has a home, say a lot, and they want to put up 2 ADUs?
So
is that an example?
Actually, no. So ADUs and JADUs would still be exempt.
Totally.
From the requirement. So you'd have to put up a duplex, for example.
Okay.
Like 2-unit project would start to be subject to that rule.
So then one of the units would be low income?
Yeah, you could either build under the proposal, either build one of the units as a It depends if they're for sale or for rent. But as a low, let's say a low income unit, or, and this is what would be more likely, you would pay an affordable housing fee to get out of actually building the unit, and you'd pay some amount, which we'll talk about, into an affordable housing fund for the town to manage and then use for affordable housing purposes. Okay, next slide, please. So this is now when we start to talk about the breakdown within the 20% that's going to be required to be set aside for affordable housing in a residential development project. You can see the existing affordability requirements, which when you add those up, again, that's the first bullet, equals 25%. We have 5% of the units set aside for very low income units. We have 10% set aside for low income units and 10% set aside for moderate income units. And there's no difference between whether those are rental units or condos or for sale product. As proposed, we do think it's important to break down and differentiate between rental projects and for sale projects in terms of the required amount of affordability, or how deep of an affordable requirement there is. And there was consensus not only from our consultants, Strategic Economics, but other experience from City of San Rafael and the county, that going deeper affordability requirements for sale projects is challenging. So in a sense, what I'm saying is that selling an affordable unit to someone who meets the income eligibility requirements for very low income, 50% of AMI, is difficult to find qualified buyers. And also, even if there are qualified buyers at that income level, the ongoing maintenance and HOA costs and other things become challenging, or can become challenging for that buyer to keep up with, because of uncertainty perhaps with the jobs that they have or what have you. And there's been experience where those are more likely to be, I think, foreclosed upon than other units in those projects. So you'll see there's a different options there. And then we also, based on feedback from this commission, also feedback from our colleagues and that we've been working with, have different affordability levels for smaller projects, which are going to be less onerous requirements, medium-sized projects, which we define as 10 to 29 units, and then larger scale projects, which will have the deeper affordability requirements. And so let's see, we can go to the next slide and start to get into the different options now available. So this is now for rental projects. We are going to allow for two different options. And this really comes out of some of the conversations with developers that our team and our consultants had over the last many months. I think there were overall about three developer forums, and they really thought that on rental projects, you really need to provide some more flexibility about how to meet the affordable requirements in order to adapt or be able for them to have more options to create a feasible project. Again, what we don't want is for these requirements to just preclude anybody from actually going forward and developing a project because it's just too onerous. And so the options allow some flexibility depending on the particular project and location that a developer might build. So you can see this is for rental projects, option one. You can see the smaller projects, there's more flexibility in that. A greater percentage of the 20% set aside can be paid in, we're calling it in lieu fee, but I think we're gonna, from last time, Commissioner Metcalf, we also are calling it an affordable housing fee. So we will, I know it's not labeled that here, but we've been trying to make the transition slowly but surely in our conversations, but we will get there. So an affordable housing fee of 10%. You can see as you go up, there is to a mid-sized project, 10% very low, 10% moderate would be the requirement. Those, there is no option for in lieu, so that would all be required to be on-site housing. And then for 30 more units, you can see there's an option to provide 15% at very low, and then an affordable housing fee for 5%. And then the next option for rental projects, adjust this a little bit more. And instead of having, the very low, if a developer didn't want to build very low income units, they could provide a little bit more, 15% for a smaller project, 15% at low income, and a 5% in lieu fee. You can see the same thing, sort of allowing a little bit more flexibility for 11 to 29 units, more low income units rather than the very low. And then 30 more units as well. I'm sorry. Did I not say? Next slide. I'm still on option 1. I did not say the option. I'm still trying to get to option 2. Sorry about that. So I was just describing the small projects, 2 to 10, 11 to 29, and 30 or more units. There's some examples there. Let's go to the next slide. So that's for rental projects. And then for sale, you can see the income categories change, and we don't have any requirement for very low income units anymore. It's low, moderate, and actually a new category that we're calling above moderate, which is about the 135% AMI, which actually fits nice. More of this moderate and the above moderate fit nicely into this sort of missing middle type housing, workforce housing that we often talk about in Corte Madera. Still substantially less than what market rate goes for, but still ultimately at quite high prices nonetheless, but more affordable to middle income homeowners or prospective homeowners. So this is now for the for sale projects. Smaller projects, again, it's all above moderate. Again, it makes it easier to actually build these projects, not without having too onerous requirements for affordable units. 5 to 29 units. The thresholds have also changed as well, obviously, in this table. So 5 to 29 is now the mid-sized project. You can see how those spreads are, and then the higher 30 or more unit project, 5% low, 10% moderate, and 5% above moderate. Yes, Commissioner Metcalf.
When we talk about units,
Yes.
are we talking about apartments and condos, or are we talking about single family units that a developer may come in and build a tract of 20 homes? Is that's a unit also?
Correct. So it applies to both types. That would be, interestingly enough, so we have like the Robin Drive project, for example, although that was developed as a rental project. So nonetheless, that would be a subdivision containing 16, basically, let's forget the ADUs in Robin Drive for a minute. That's 16 units. It's a 16-unit residential project. And by definition, one of our ordinance amendments is to actually define what a residential development project is. And included in that is the development of essentially a subdivision of single-family homes.
Okay, the homes, I don't know what the name of it is, across from the police station on Doherty Drive.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, I know what you love.
You know the ones I mean. All right. The homes that we see from the street.
Correct.
Are the affordable ones.
Yes.
They are much smaller than the other homes. So when we talk about building the moderate or the low, it doesn't have to be the same as the others, but you charge less. It can be smaller and have less amenities.
Well, so that that speaks to actually one of the policies in the guidelines that we have drafted as well, and it speaks to some of the rules around exactly what you're talking about, what these units actually look like, how they're integrated. And so if you look at attachment, sorry, I'm going to the attachment. There's the, I think it's attachment 3.
It's exhibit B to attachment 1.
Okay, thank you. So exhibit B to attachment 1. Exhibit A to attachment 1. I have to find it myself.
And then here, Adam, I have it in front of me. There's a requirement for the location and type of affordable housing units that states that the affordable unit shall be dispersed throughout the residential development project and be of a similar mix and type to that of the residential development project as a whole. And it includes such thing as being similar in number of bedrooms, square footage, and also the design needs to be similar as well.
And so similar is a key word there, obviously. So it is oftentimes that those are discussions with the developer, and they're, I don't want to say negotiated. That's why you have a guideline, that it actually, we have a policy about it, but it doesn't mean that it has to be exactly the same as the market rate units. But we want to see that they're actually similar in terms of.
And when we say integrated, it doesn't mean that it cannot be one stream of homes that are the affordable ones. The affordable ones don't have to be like 2 market rate and 1 affordable.
Yeah, I think that the idea is that we're avoiding sort of concentrating the affordable units in one location on the site or one wing of a building. So for example, in Tam Ridge, that we made it very purposeful in terms of actually ensuring that they were spread out throughout the project, some 2 bedroom, some 1 bedroom, et cetera, et cetera. So it wasn't like the one wing of the building were the affordable units.
Thank you.
So that's the goal, and but that is a conversation. And sorry that for those who may be listening, it's that exhibit and the guidelines, which we can talk about, but we drafted what it's called the Town of Corte Madera Guidelines for the Administration of Affordable Housing Policies. And that's related to section 1824.120 of the municipal code. And that's part of what we're also asking for the Planning Commission's recommendation for approval to the Town Council this evening. All right, you can go on to the next. I think we covered those. And here now we talk about what are actually what do we mean by affordable units? And so these are essentially what would be affordable to households making these target what we're calling area median incomes. And so for very low, the units would have to be affordable to those at making 50% of the area median income. And that's, we define that in the guidelines as well, in the document. Low is going to be the midpoint between 50 and 85 and 80%, which is that range for low income as defined by HUD. And so that's affordable to those individuals making 65% of the area median income, and so on, with moderate and above moderate. Again, those are at the midpoint of the ranges defined by HUD and also consistent with the California State Department of Housing and Community Development. And just to show you what that means, the next slide will show you sort of the incomes for different sized households in those ranges. So anyways, if you let me know if you have questions on that. Next slide. So let me get to So affordable housing, we used affordable housing in lieu fees. So this speaks to now, let's say either you're not putting all of those units within your project. Again, pursuant to what we talked about before, the developer will have an option in certain types of projects to pay an affordable housing in lieu fee for a portion of those units or to offset not including those on site. And the other way it comes up is if there's a fraction of a unit, when you do the calculation and you actually end up with what's 10% low income requirement for a 8-unit project or something like that, it's going to be in 0.8 unit of a unit. So a developer would have the option of actually paying instead of providing that 0.8 unit, because that obviously you can't provide a 0.8 unit. So that's where this affordable housing in lieu fee comes up. And this was really driven what number we should use as in terms of what the cost of essentially it's essentially the gap between the cost of constructing that unit and what a household can pay at a 90% AMI income level. And that's that last bullet on the slide. And this was driven, the study that we had, Strategic Economics provide us, really dug into that calculation and coming up with a number that actually could be justified based on those parameters. And so there are 3 different types of in lieu affordable housing in lieu fees. There's one for single family subdivisions, one for sale condominium townhomes, and one for rental apartments, because the construction costs of each of those units differ quite substantially. So if we go to the next slide, you can see the gaps between the cost of that constructing one of those units and what a household earning 90% of the area median income could afford to pay for those units. And with that, those are the fees that were actually, and Martha, maybe you can correct me.
I will add that several of the jurisdictions are contemplating just adopting one in lieu fee and adopting the rental in lieu fee that would apply to all 3 of these types of projects. We're recommending that we adopt 3 separate in lieu fees because like a condominium townhome project, it's more difficult to build that type of project. And oftentimes, if you require a more expensive in lieu fee, that could result in the project not being feasible to construct. So our recommendation to the commission was to adopt 3 separate in lieu fees for these 3 different prototypes, since the affordability gap for the 3 different types is different.
And this would also, one other thing to note, this would also increase. We're recommending using the California Construction Cost Index as the metric or the barometer, basically to year over year, whether it increases or decreases, to use that to increase or decrease this affordable housing in lieu fee. And that would be done as specified in the guidelines on, I believe it's January 1st of each year. Next slide. And then just to note that we've talked about payment of affordable housing in lieu fees. There would also be another option of donation of land to the town if a developer sought and had land to offer. That could be a way to an alternative means of compliance with the affordable housing regulations that are being proposed tonight. And that would be in an instance, it's hard to imagine necessarily right now, but theoretically that could provide land with which the town could then facilitate development of affordable housing with the affordable housing funds that are collected through in lieu fees.
You're speaking of land at a different site, correct?
It could be, yes.
What if someone was developing 20 homes, owns the land, but is really utilizing maybe 16 acres of 20 acres. If they donated the other 4 acres, then the town could build affordable housing in whatever, in the categories it chose on the land. That would be
Yes.
workable. Okay, thank you.
And I think, do we have, yeah, we can go to the next slide. I think lastly, keep going. Yeah, thanks, Tracy. Lastly, just wanted to mention one of the other things. Probably the most important, I shouldn't say that. One of the things that's been sort of floating around in my mind since several years now, not only the fact that our current ordinance is 25% and it's too high, not only that our affordable housing in lieu fee right now is 0. Obviously, that's not a good thing, but also that our affordable housing fund, and when we do get in lieu fees, right now we have about $550,000. It is restricted strictly to the construction of new affordable housing. So there are other potential opportunities to utilize the fund in ways that serves the same purpose. Certainly the construction of new affordable and expanding the supply of new affordable housing is probably the most significant thing we should be focused on with that fund, but there may be other activities that the town through the town council may ultimately want to consider appropriate uses to accomplish affordable housing goals with that affordable housing fund. And so that is laid out in the ordinance amendment to section 3.48 of the municipal code titled Affordable Housing Fund. And so other jurisdictions and consulting with other Marin County jurisdictions, there is more flexibility with their funds, provided that obviously by the town council approval to do some additional programs or potential uses of the fund. I'm trying to again look through my ordinance. It should be, it's attachment exhibit A to attachment 1 of the staff packet. And so if you look at page 4 of that attachment, it lists several examples, I should say, of what would be appropriate, and it lays out specifically that the fund could be used certainly for construction of housing affordable to households of very low and moderate income households, acquisition of property and property rights, including acquisition of existing housing units, and the provision of long-term affordability covenants on those units. So that speaks to potentially preservation of existing affordable housing units or of other property that could be used for affordable housing. And then financial assistance to other governmental entities, nonprofit organizations, or private individuals in the acquisition of property or construction of housing affordable to households of very low and moderate incomes. And some of the costs of program development and ongoing administration of the fund. So I think allowing a little bit more flexibility is appropriate. We're pretty restricted on how to use those funds now. And as you know, maybe that will accrue some greater sort of monies in that fund as we go forward with this change. But it's also quite possible that we have relatively, we've had $550,000 to this point for a while, and we haven't been able to use that money for certain purposes that maybe the town could have used it for, with obviously achieving the affordable housing goals that it's intended for. So with that, I'll conclude this my long presentation. I know you wanted it to be shorter, but I want to make sure that it's out there and that we try to explain this as well as we can and as thoroughly as we can, because there's a lot of detail and the complexities to it. So happy to answer any questions you may have. And Martha, anything you want to add at this point?
Yeah, I will add that I spoke with Commissioner Rizzo today. He had several clarifying questions about how the tables worked when you were evaluating the number of affordable units that were required, and then how it was split into the different categories. So I answered those questions. And then he also mentioned he had concerns with the smaller projects, the 2 to 4 unit projects, and the feasibility of constructing those types of projects if you had to pay a substantial in lieu fee. So he had stated that he was going to recommend tonight that for the small projects that are 2 to 4 units, that instead of paying an in lieu fee, an alternative compliance be added that would allow a developer to add an accessory dwelling unit that would be deed restricted. So I wanted to share that with the commission.
How does that work with, or did it come up in other discussions with other communities?
It has not come up. At our workshop, we did talk about if we were going to keep the unit, one unit, that we would possibly consider accessory dwelling unit being constructed to satisfy the affordability requirement, but we did not talk about it in light of these multifamily projects.
Right.
And as far as I'm aware, no agencies have discussed this.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's a very thorough packet. It's very good. Who's got their microphone on? Margaret, do you have any questions?
What are the fees? I see some of it is crossed out here. What are the fees used for? Is there a?
Yes.
Currently?
No, or what projected?
Oh. Well, I think certainly goal number one would be to typically how they're used. So there's been actually the city of San Rafael has used their affordable housing fund recently for several projects in San Rafael, which have been in the range there of about $1 to $2 million, where they've assisted in gap financing for either 100% a nonprofit that's building 100% affordable project, and they're getting sources from low income housing tax credits, they're getting sources from here, but there's a gap, and they need to fill that gap, and this funding can come in really handy with the lenders, and showing that there's enough funds there. Certainly, it can also help with land acquisition costs for a nonprofit affordable housing developer, for example. I think the county actually got most of their funding for the Project Home Key project from the state funds, but theoretically, I think some affordable housing fund monies was also used for ongoing a contract for ongoing services. I'm not sure if it came exactly through that funding source. I know in Fairfax, when the county, again, provided some gap funding for the Victory Village project more recently out in Fairfax that was developed. So it's typically, that's how we see it being used to also, to bring in and help facilitate, ideally a nonprofit affordable housing project to come into a site that they're, otherwise not attracted to. But if there's funding available, they may say, oh, well, this could actually work, from the town. I do think one of the things in the future that the town may want to consider is preservation. So if they could be existing deed restricted units that are coming out of when the original deed restrictions on affordable units were made in the 80s and 90s. Some of those had pretty short terms of 30 to 40 years. So we're going to start to see some of those units come out of their deed restriction requirements. it can be complicated, but there may be opportunities for preservation, or there may be a property that is sort of naturally occurring affordable today. You know, and perhaps the town can partner, you know, there's a variety of options. I just don't, but perhaps there's ways to use it for preservation purposes. And so anyways, those are the typical types of things that I think are out there and are used for that aren't directly necessarily tied to construction of new, you know, construction costs, essentially. Pre-development is another one, I would say. So certain, again, certain affordable housing developers are reluctant to sort of spend capital on pre-development costs, which are the early sort of investigative work. If they don't, you know, because it's maybe money down the drain, essentially limited funds, but if there's additional funds to help with that, that may help have those types of projects be explored further, get them further down the road.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Phyllis.
I was wondering about, we're talking about multi-use, you know, changing zoning to multi-use. If, for example, okay, well, we own the shopping, that little shopping center. Okay. If we wanted to have a second story added that would have apartments, could we be the ones that develop it, or do we go out and put up funds and find a nonprofit or somebody to do it? Or doesn't it make any difference?
Different options. I mean, yeah.
They're both feasible then.
Certainly, yeah.
So the town could take on the contract, you know, the construction contract itself.
Yeah.
The general contractor, of course, you know, have all the.
Well, I mean, similar to how we're, you know, the town is building the town hall, new town hall, it would be a similar process to that. But typically that's not how it's done.
Yeah.
Typically it would be a, you know, you know, there would be some arrangement with it depends what, again, you'd have to decide first what is being proposed and what wants to be built. But certainly if there was an affordable housing component to that, the funds could be expended to help use that, you know, to cover those costs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bob, do you have any questions for these guys?
No, just to comment that I appreciate all the work that you've done on this, and that from attending the Marin Conservation League talk on this, you know, it's clear that Corte Madera is way ahead of everybody else in the community, except maybe the county is also doing a good job. But I think you've done tremendous work on this. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Bob. I think my primary questions had to do with how that process of gap funding might occur, because it seemed like that's a natural use for the funds. And is that established by creating a memo of understanding between yourself and a developer to say, you know, here's what we've got for money, here's what you've got for money? And
yeah, you know, I used to do some work for a nonprofit affordable housing group in New York for a few years. And you know, it gets pretty, the deals can range from one to the other. I'm not as familiar as how it's done here necessarily, but I think essentially there's letter of interest that would sort of start to lay out and potentially an option or something like that for site control for a property. And then you start to assemble all the different funding sources. And you sort of layer it so you have you know, a letter of interest and an agreement with the owner that you have site control for a certain period of time, for example, until you're able to apply for and see if you receive low-income housing tax credit funding from the state or from other groups. And part of that application to the state would also include other funding sources. And so at that point, there would probably be an agreement that between the town and the development entity that they could, this money, if funding comes in from the state, is used for that purpose. Can be used for gap financing or whatnot. And it oftentimes can make that more attractive to the state, who's ranking and rating all these various different applications for tax credits. That's just the tax credit side of things. Private side of things, I'm not as familiar with. If there was a developer who wanted to exceed or could potentially exceed the inclusionary requirements that are in here and say, hey, instead of 20%, if you want us to go to higher than that, maybe we would. If the town wanted to provide some funding for that, then that might be an option too. I'm not as familiar with all the different ways that could be used.
There must be some parameters that are commonplace.
Yeah,
but none of these funds can be used for administrative purposes, basically.
We did similar to San Rafael. There is just for administration of the fund itself. So it'd be pretty small, but there is if the town council so chose, they could authorize some of the funds to be expended for the administration of the fund itself and some of the activities that you're actually talking about in terms of facilitating these production of the housing or arrangements with a developer or something like that.
So essentially then the money is present to initiate the process with somebody rather than trying to say, oh, well, we need a grant to go chase this down or something.
Yeah, and there can be, the way that San Rafael has done it is they put out a request for, what is it called? A notice of funding availability, a NOFA themselves. And they said, look, we have funds in our affordable housing fund. Is anybody interested in using this money for a project in town, for affordable housing, purposes? And so that then can attract, potential interested parties, affordable housing developers or whatnot, to respond to that request. Where it goes from then there's an evaluation process. So that's where the administrative costs, because that would take some considerable, staff time and time, I'm sure. But this is a way to, that's what obviously often gets people to really pay attention, is if you throw something out there, say, hey, there's money here. Do you want to do a project in Corte Madera? And we'll see what we get. But it certainly requires a lot of negotiating, relationship building, negotiating skills, things like that to make a deal, make it, along the way.
We'd like to check with the other commissioners here and see if you have any commentary about the level of fees and so forth for, this response to this about the 2-unit and more, right? And what they're proposing for a fee level. No,
I don't have any problem with, though I would like to see whether or not what Jim Rizzo brought up is something that is feasible. So that would affect the 1 to 4 unit. But the fee itself, I don't have a problem with.
Bob.
I just hope there's some developers out there that want to build some of these properties and create some affordable housing for us. I have no idea if the fee is appropriate, too high, too low.
Okay. Do you have any sense of that, Margaret?
I have no experience with that kind of figuring out what would be feasible for a developer to afford it. Don't know.
Okay.
I'd leave it to the experts.
Right. So your fee for like 2 or more units. So if somebody wants to do a duplex there, right? And so the fee for that duplex is going to range.
Yeah, 40% of, if it was a for sale, it would be 40% of, I think it's just over $200,000. So it's around 80,000.
Yeah, if that, so that maybe it's helpful. Do you have, I thought we had some examples. I know there's examples in the staff report, but yeah, if you want to walk through that.
I will say I got sort of lost in some of the math.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so a 4-unit, we'll do a for sale. If it was a 4-unit condominium project, then you first look at what the 20% requirement. So 20% times 4 is 0.8. And then from there, you look at what the affordability set aside is. So for a 2 to 4 unit project, it's 20%. So the entirety of that 0.8 unit would be an above moderate unit. But since it's a fractional unit, you either can pay the in lieu fee, 80% of the in lieu fee, or you can provide one affordable unit on site. So you have a choice.
okay.
And I will say, one of the changes we're making is we're removing the requirements from the zoning ordinance and putting them in these guidelines. So that allows for changes to be made in the future more easily. Instead of going through an ordinance amendment, it can be made through a resolution. And obviously we'll continue to evaluate these policies. And if we're finding that these smaller projects, the 2 to 4 projects, if we're hearing from developers in the development community that it's impossible to pencil it out with the fees, then we could evaluate other options at that time as well.
Okay, I completely forgot here that we have to take public comment on this. So I'm going
Haven't
to.
acted yet, so you're fine.
I see 2 people that are online still, and they may want to raise their hand. So we'll open up public comment for this for possibly Patty Stoliar or Rosemary, who might want to say something. I don't know. Oh, there is a hand, and it is Patty Stoliar.
No. Go ahead, Patty. You should be able to unmute yourself.
I'm still awake. Yes, my comment, which I sent in, and maybe I sent it to the screwed email address, was about how long they remain affordable. And I think you were proposing 55 years, but my point was that if it's not into perpetuity, then that's lost to the housing stock for affordable housing. So I'm a big believer in having it into perpetuity. That's all.
Thank you, Patty. Anybody else with a comment that they'd like to make? Do you have any emails in?
No, just the one from Patty, which she personally delivered verbally.
All right, there you have it. So we'll close the public comment section and see if there's any more comments from the commissioners here regarding this item.
I'm happy to respond to Patty, the public comment. We do in the guidelines in paragraph F, we did receive that comment, I think, after the last workshop. But we do say essentially that, kind of paraphrasing, but units, all regulatory agreements, and if the affordable units are owner occupied, resale restrictions shall be recorded by the town or its agent against all parcels having such affordable housing units and shall be effective in perpetuity, except that in the sole discretion and upon finding a financial need or infeasibility, the town council may reduce the affordability timeframe to not less than 55 years. So it is, the standard is perpetuity. And I'm not aware of reasons why it would be less than that. But again, just trying to account for unforeseen events that for some reason it may be appropriate to reduce it to some period of time less than that. And that's in the guidelines again, so it's not part of the ordinance. It was be adopted by resolution via the ordinance.
All right, then. With no more commentary here, except from Margaret.
So I just wondered if there's any consideration of combining this with like age-friendly housing or any kind of interaction with, you know, age requirements or elderly requirements.
It's currently based on income solely, not on age. And that, you know, that is common, I would say, of inclusionary zoning ordinances.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to think about, and I think it raises a good point of whether or not, and I think this is actually a gray area, and one that could be considered in something like a guideline or a policy that isn't hard and fast, but I have talked to other some colleagues about, and developer just recently, about who builds senior housing, for lack of a better word. There's many different types, obviously, but and whether or not they are able to accommodate and actually adhere to these rules for deed restricting those types of facilities to certain income levels. And certainly it's a little bit complicated because some are certainly independent living, you know, senior independent living centers, which is function very much like a residential unit, and other types of accommodations, such as I think like at Aegis and elsewhere, it's more of a communal, there's not cooking inside, you know, so it doesn't work as well for those types of facilities. So I think perhaps if we wanted to, we could require for any independent living senior housing project, and we could try to work on a definition of that, that these rules would apply, and therefore, at least if somebody was building that project, you would have some deed restricted affordable, you know, housing in those projects as well.
Peter?
You done, Margaret? Yeah, go ahead, Phyllis.
If we're going to do something for seniors, and I'm all for that, by the way, I think we should also have some kind of a notation there about disabled, independent living, you know, making sure that apartments or whatever have the grab bars and all that other stuff. I know there's a category for the state, but what is ridiculous as far as I'm concerned, and it came up in those very nice condos that were built, the 4 rows of 4 condos there by Marinjo's.
Yeah.
1 or 2 of the units were for disabled, and there was a certain premium that was gotten, but they were 2-story units, and only the downstairs had to have things for disabled. There was no way for a disabled person who got it to get upstairs, which I find to be absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
So I would like to see if, you know, to talk about seniors, and there are many seniors who will need help getting upstairs.
No, sure. And I think one of the things, and this is a little bit different from the affordable housing conversation that is sort of the center of what we're talking about now, but that has been raised to staff. And I think one thing that we will be looking at in the building department is what's called I think it's called a visitability ordinance. which gets into some of the how to design homes for being more flexible for people who may be aging in place in their homes or building new homes in town. So it's another complicated discussion, and it does get into a question of costs of housing development versus creating, and implementing, adding costs versus getting the benefits. So, but I think that's going to be discussed in a different venue as we get into building code updates later this year.
Okay, then. Bob, you have it in front of you. You want to make a motion? Whoever, someone.
Corte Madera Planning Commission Resolution number 22-010. Resolution of the Planning Commission of the Town of Corte Madera recommending that the Town Council 1 adopt an ordinance amending Charter 3.48 Affordable Housing Fund, Chapter 18.04 Definitions, and Section 18.24.120 Affordable Housing of the Corte Madera Municipal Code relating to inclusionary housing requirements, and 2, adopt a resolution approving the Town of Corte Madera guidelines for the administration of affordable housing policies related to Section 18.24.120 of the Corte Madera Municipal Code.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you.
That was a mouthful. Who wrote all that anyway?
We just wanted to see if you could say it all in one breath. No.
And Bob did.
Commissioner Bundy.
Yes.
Commissioner Bednell.
Yes.
Vice Chair Metcalf.
Yes.
And Chairman Chase.
Yes.
Thank you.
9:50.
I'd like to move the minutes.
Okay. Yeah.
Unless you're quite sure that you can wrap everything up by 10 to extend the meeting.
Do we wish to extend the meeting to address the reports?
No, let's wrap it up by 10.
Okay.
Okay. So all to approve the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we won't do reports unless you have something you got to tell us, Adam.
No.
He wouldn't dare.
You will be getting messages. We're doing a lot more housing element fun pop-up events out in the community. So you'll see us out and about. Hopefully you'll run into us, because that means we'll be at the movie night and a concert and
Nugget
4th of
Market.
July party, Nugget Market, Town Center. So
Oh, you're doing a float, right? No.
we did talk about doing a float, the housing element float, but we didn't want to, get too serious.
It's going to be titled HCD.
I think people will be throwing the candy back at us.
Well, that's very good. So let's adjourn this meeting.